Okay, hope everyone had a great break. I think we're ready to start a bit earlier, and I would like to introduce our first. Introducing our first panel is Ozzy Ghahremani. She's a tax partner at Crowe, a global tax public accounting consulting and technology firm. And thank you for being such a partner. I really enjoyed getting to know you and working with you, and for most importantly, supporting this family business conference and center and on the silver level. So thank you so much, Ozzy.
Thank you, Darlene. Good morning, everyone. This session is a fireside chat focused on creativity and innovation in family businesses. We are extremely honored and excited to have with us RJ Melman, President of Let Us Entertain You Enterprises, an independent family-owned restaurant group based in Chicago that owns, manages, and licenses more than 110 establishments. Founded in 1971 by Richard Melman and Jerry A. Orzoff, Let Us Entertain You Services has developed and services guests at more than 60 concepts ranging from fast food casual to fine dining restaurants. It is truly an incubator of innovative concepts, a well of ideas, and an example of how innovative and creative a family business can be. RJ is active within Chicago philanthropic and business communities and serves on a number of board and committees, including the board of directors for Del Taco Restaurants and the leadership committee of YPO's Chicago chapter. The fireside chat session will be moderated by Professor Sona Gala, who teaches business law at LMU and also works as legal counsel in the hospitality and food service industry. She's also a member of the advisory board of LMU's Family Business Entrepreneurship Center. Thank you both for sharing your time and expertise today with us.
Thank you, Ozzy, for that wonderful introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'd also like to take a minute to say thank you and welcome to RJ for joining us today. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me
this morning with us. Of course. So why don't we just dive right in? I really want to talk to you a little bit about the history of Let Us Entertain You Enterprises. Can you talk to us a little bit about how LEYE grew as a company and what you believe its impact and achievements have been in the world of hospitality? What are you most proud of?
Sure. Let Us Entertain You didn't start as a company. It started as a restaurant that was opened by my dad and his best friend in 1971. That restaurant is called RJ Grunts. It's the place that I'm named after. It's still around. It just celebrated its 50th anniversary. It's a little hamburger joint in Lincoln Park. RJ Grunts, I think, was, just a culmination of a lot of my dad's ideas at the time. It was pretty progressive. It had organic meals in 71. There was a non-smoking section in a time where that didn't exist. It's credited for having the first salad bar, maybe in the country. And it was a lot of fun. It was definitely driven by the hippie era of the 60s, loud music and, all of that. And it sort of was a different kind of dining. And I think that led to a second restaurant, two led to three. We find ourselves today after 50 years with about 110 restaurants, 12 states in the country. And I think we're probably one of the 2 or 3 largest privately held multi-concept groups. For us, I think one of the lasting impacts is that we've probably, and I don't take credit for this, I give it to my dad, but the model for what the modern restaurant group, kind of what Danny Meyer modeled himself on, and Steven Starr out of New York and Philadelphia, and Sam Fox out of the Southwest, all sort of had this multi-concept growth where they were doing more than one thing, not just growing a singular concept, not just growing Hard Rock hotels or restaurants or growing McDonald's, but rather just, doing a Thai restaurant and doing a Vietnamese restaurant, and then doing an Italian place. And that was, kind of how I think that developed. And I think part of it was just from a desire to innovate within the city, creativity, but also to not want to travel a lot. Early on, we were only in Chicago, and I think my dad probably had a desire not to get on planes all the time. So doing more business in the same city was there. So,
I mean, your dad definitely was a trendsetter. It's obvious. I mean, he's ahead of his time. You know, we've looked at some of the kind of the history of the company, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about your personal and professional history. I mean, you obviously grew up in this family business.
sure.
It started as RJ Grunts. And did you always know that you wanted to be part of the family
No,
business, or was it more of a winding road that kind of led you into the business?
I probably always liked the industry. I work with my brother and sister as well. They're in the business. Also,
Yes.
they're my partners. And are extremely active on the executive committee or executive roles for the company. There was never any pressure to go into it, but at the same time, our dad's work was fun. It was, you got to go, you're 6 years old and you're getting to go with him and you're playing in the cooler and there's like live lobsters and crabs and it's like it's not like a regular job. I have all these friends and one works in a parking company, one works as a lawyer, and it's definitely not the same level of excitement. So he had a really magical ability to make work fun. At the end of the day, you get to go try all the new restaurants when you're a young kid, drive to the city and really experience pretty special times, for me at least. And so I think I always thought that I probably would go into it. Although if you would ask me in high school, I would say no. But when I was about 17, I started working in kitchens. I worked outside of the company, inside of the company. I worked through college. I was cooking and working as a sous chef as soon as I graduated college. And that's when I knew, I mean, I've been working full time since basically the day I graduated college, although I don't cook professionally anymore. It was a really great foundation for how I got here today.
So I have to ask just for fun, given the fact that you worked in professional kitchens and you were a sous chef, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, which is obviously leading LEYE, what do you think you might have done?
I probably would have, well, I was a political science major in school, and so I had an interest in just government in general. I worked on a campaign once, and I remember soliciting people for money for the campaign for a local representative. And I realized I absolutely do not want to do that. So I probably would have gone to law school or been in law of some kind, but I don't think it would have been nearly as gratifying as what I'm doing today.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the gratification in terms of just the way you speak about what you're doing today. So for sure, I think you are where you need to be, frankly. I think we ought to dive sort of into the meat of our conversation today, which is really about innovation and creation and hospitality. And your company has many different brands under its umbrella. I'm just going to name a few: Beatrice, RPM Steak, RPM Fish, but you own many more. And so I really wanted to understand from you, what is your process for creating a new brand? I mean, how do you take an idea or concept, because I'm sure you come across many, and ultimately bring that concept to market, right? Like, how do you decide if it's going to be a single unit restaurant or it's one that you may want to grow? And I thought maybe we could talk about it in the context of a recent example of a concept or brand you've brought to market.
Yeah, and so it's sort of a two-part question. I'll answer the first part of how we create a restaurant, and maybe I'll actually answer your second part first, which is, do we think that we can do multiple of them or continue to grow them? As a company, we're dysfunctional. We have never done really more than 10 of anything in our lives. So we probably have the worst ADD of anyone. And maybe it's one of the benefits of being a privately held company. We can do what we want when we can do it. And we don't have an obligation to grow. If we pick a year and we don't do any new restaurants, we can. And if we have some where we do 15, we can. It's, we just want to do things that we do really, really well. We often turn down opportunities, and this is a great example of the pandemic has created more opportunities than we know what to do with, and we have to turn them down because we truly can't execute them at the way that we would want to. And it takes a lot of care and development, and especially when you're doing something new. Replicating something is definitely easier, maybe not as exciting, but doing new, you have to make every decision along the way, right? The restaurant doesn't exist, and there might be a template, but we're creating a Chinese restaurant. Okay, what is on the menu? What does the menu look like? What is the guest experience from the minute they walk in to not? We're walking through and kind of playing out that entire thing. What does it look when you order dessert? What does the place look like? What does the silverware look like? What does your glassware look like? Those are all, there's truly 100,000 decisions that probably get made along the way in shaping something new. But at the end of the day, the first question was, how do we decide what we're going to do? And for us, it's both interest and food. Everything we have ever created starts truly with the food. You asked for an example, and we have three little ramen shops called Ramen and Sona in Chicago, and we have an Italian restaurant called RPM Italian. And one day the chef calls up and says, "Hey, I'm working on something. I'd love you to try it." And we thought maybe it's it's a new pasta dish for the menu or whatever. And he put up a bowl of, I think it was like smoked brisket and black garlic ramen. And it's not even something that's necessarily even on the menu today. And it was delicious. And he said, I'd love to work on this concept with you guys and work on this. And it was one dish that sort of then spurred a trip to Japan with my brother and my partners, two partners, and the chef. And we probably went to 50 ramen shops. Our hands are swollen from all the sodium that we had. And where we got to really discuss it, and I think going to Japan, you realize that ramen places come in every kind of form. There's some that serve seafood ramen, some that are chicken-based and pork-based, and some that have cold, and there weren't really any limits. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are 6 seats, some are some have little windows that you sit there, and it gave us a lot of freedom to kind of do what we wanted to do, and so that led to menu development, obviously beyond this one bowl of ramen, and we found a space for it. And we work better when we have the idea first, and then work towards finding a space, because we're showing locations all the time, and let's say it's 4,000 square feet, but the ramen shop needs 2,000. Obviously, then we have to create something for the 4,000 square feet, and that works a little bit harder for us. It's better when we have the idea. We have these, we call them idea files, but we put them together where we're always doing research and have images and recipes and ideas, and I think we're extremely prepared to open something new, and we do a tremendous amount of research that goes into it rather than just opening something.
Yeah, I have to say, when we visited your restaurants in Chicago, it was so fascinating to me that, it wasn't, when you went into the restaurant, it was a real experience, right? It was, there was an atmosphere, a vibe, and then the food and the wait staff and the setup in the restaurant, look and feel, and even down to the music, it fed into that atmosphere or vibe. I mean, you could tell it was so extremely well thought out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I don't want to say that's just myself, right? I have my siblings and partners, and there's a lot of people that put that together, and we put image boards together and style boards, and we talk about every aspect of that. We talk about what is the music that's supposed to play at this place. If you're doing a old school red sauce Italian place, we're going to play some old Motown and some oldies. It really matters. Then we put together music lists, and what does the lighting want to feel like? What does the greeting of the table want to look like? What are you saying? Hello? Are you saying hi, hun, if you're at a diner? Or are you saying, there's a different attitude. It's a little bit like scripting a play or a musical.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. And so, I mean, obviously, LEYE is in the business of creating brands, but you have plenty of existing brands. And within those existing brands, I'm sure you want customers to keep coming back, to keep enjoying the experience. And so that takes some, idea innovation and implementing new ideas and plans into existing restaurants. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what's your process to test ideas that you generate, and how do you narrow down what you ultimately want to implement? And maybe you can talk about some ideas or plans that you've implemented in some of your restaurants recently that you found to be successful.
Yeah, for us, I guess we sort of have a saying, and it maybe overarches, and there's two, I'll say both of them. One is that restaurants don't get tired, restaurateurs get tired. So anything that we open, we're fortunate to have a lot of stuff that's open 20, 25, 30 years. Obviously our original restaurant's still open. And they require maintenance. These are not singular pieces of art. I had a friend who's a movie director, and he wanted to get in the restaurant industry. He opened his own restaurant. I gave him a little advice the first was, "Are you sure you want to do this?" But he, amazing director, and he finishes the movie, and the movie's done, right? It doesn't change. It's released in the theater. It does really well. If he had difficulty with an actor or an actress, that was a time and place that lasted for weeks, and then the shoot's over and everyone goes their separate ways. They edit it and it's released and it doesn't change. But in the restaurant industry, things change every day. We're living in a world that is more tumultuous for our industry than ever before. Just like everyone else, and these are not new things, but supply chain is a real issue. We can't get plateware, glassware, stuff that we counted on from Europe is gone away. Beef prices from 2019 are up 60% for us on the prime side. King crab, they've decided not to fish this year in Alaska, and they probably will fish next year. So there are real issues that affect us that people don't think about. So everything changes, so it doesn't stay the same. So you kind of always have to be working on that, and having partners that are dedicated to growing and changing the restaurants is for me the key to doing that. So I said restaurants don't get tired, restaurateurs get tired, and I think they stop innovating in what they do. Success is a time and place. I don't think anything lasts forever. You hear about places that were open for 100 years or open for 50 years, but there's no guarantee that continues to happen. And if you're not changing and adapting, you're doing that. For us, I can talk about it right now. We're opening a new RPM Italian in Las Vegas next year, and we use that as an opportunity. And RPM Italian's been open in Chicago for 10 years. We have one in DC. Both are grand slams. They've been, but we took the chef team and the team, and we said, we're doing one in Las Vegas, and this is a great opportunity for us to go back and really refine what we did. So we went through every item on the menu, 55 items, and we tasted everything, and we really improved it. We took this octopus dish and we made a better one. We took a salad and made it better, and it wasn't, and sometimes we deleted stuff that we felt was dated or old. We updated some new stuff. And for, that'll open next year in February or March, but we feel like we've done the work we need to do to kind of advance it. We really kind of SWAT teamed it, 4 or 5 chefs working on it. My brother, sister, my dad actually was still active. My 2 other partners who help run the RPMs, and we, have just been working on it for the last 2 weeks in preparation, not only to improve the one that's there, but also to get ready for the Vegas. So fun.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're literally starting in terms of the food itself. How do we evolve? How do we change it to changing tastes, to what consumers want? That's amazing.
And you just because you did something 10 years ago, you go and look at it and you say, well, this was the Caesar salad we started with 10 years ago.
Right.
And you say, well, do I like it today? And sometimes the answer is you're allowed to change your mind, or it doesn't feel relevant, or it could look like a better value, or it could be, it doesn't have to be, you just have to be critical of your own work a little bit and say, this is what we did in 20, and we've changed the menu, hundreds of times since 2011 or 2012, but it's a good exercise to say, really looking at it, and we go pretty methodically. So we said, let's just do appetizers for these 3 days, and then we'll go to salads, and then we'll go to the pasta section. So it was, for us, that's the only way to work, is kind of methodically through the places.
Yeah, so you make sure that you're covering all your bases. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good lead into this next question I have for you. Look, over the years, you and your family have grown many concepts and units in lots of different cities. And I think when you have so much growth and innovation, you obviously have success, but along the way, there has to be some, I think, mistakes and failures. And I think you learn just as much from your mistakes and failures as you do from the successes, if not more. And so I really wanted to ask you, how do you, your family, the organization, how do you treat and deal with mistakes and failures? Do you have a process for breaking down what's happened, learning from it, and then being able to move forward so that those mistakes and failures don't hold you back?
Yeah, for us, well, first of all, failure is not a destination. It's just a, and in our industry, it's sort of hard to define. There's not there is a scorecard, but it's harder to define what that scorecard is. A place can be wildly busy and not make any money. A place can be slow, perceivably so, and actually do okay. We do a lot of things not financially driven, but maybe just for, obviously we're in a business, but we want to be proud of what we're doing, probably first and foremost. For us, we make mistakes all the time, but because we're changing all the time, it makes it a lot easier. We put something on and it doesn't sell. Well, I guess technically that's a failure, right? It didn't, the guest didn't enjoy it. The kitchen couldn't execute it. No one wanted it. And you just kind of say, okay, the octopus didn't sell. Let's go try calamari. Let's try something else, and you're doing that all the time. We are constantly, we do something we call it stars and dogs, where we're looking at what is moving on each menu every 2 weeks. And across the company, we kind of do this. So you're being analytical about what's working and not working on a pretty consistent basis, and not spending energy. But we miss on concepts too, and concepts do run out of steam. But we had a little, I can name, I don't want to say it happens a lot, but we had a French restaurant that actually became the ramen restaurant. That was gangbusters when it began, and then over like the second year or third year, it really started to decline. And I think people didn't identify it; it was too big, and we cut it in half. We put ramen on the other side, made the French side smaller. The French side still didn't work, so we put an Italian restaurant in there. And so sometimes the location's good, but you just don't have the right idea, or you're not connecting with the neighborhood. And for us, I don't know if there's one formula for figuring that out, but you kind of know when something's not working. But at the end of the day, there's three things a restaurant can be: a horrible failure, I suppose, like it does, loses its ass, a giant success and it's doing well, and then something in the middle. And in some ways, in the middle is the hardest for us. When something's kind of like, if we see 10 more people a day, we're going to make a little bit of money. If we could just figure out how to get another $2,000 a week out of sales, those are the ones that are hard, because you don't know which way to go, up or down, or if you're really close or you're not close. And so I actually think the ones that are doing horrible are easier for us to fix, because you missed. So
that makes sense. But it also seems like you have a great deal of flexibility. Like you're willing to shift, change, maneuver depending on what's working and what's not. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of rigidity in terms of the decisions. You're going to put something out there, but see if it works. And if it doesn't, then let's try something else.
Yeah. We have a lot of confidence, in ourselves about what we do. And, we're in the restaurants a lot. And there's a question on the side that says, how do you validate an idea? How do you do the research? And I think that sort of segues into this question, which is, for us, I don't believe in focus groups and things like that. We don't do that. We do ask questions for people. And I think part of it's just being in restaurants and being there. We don't make the best decisions as a company, I think, when we're in a boardroom. Our business is, and if you think about how we're structured, our corporate office is about 100 people, and in a normal time we have about 7,000 employees. So you realize how decentralized we are, with people in restaurants. 6,900 in restaurants, 100 at the corporate office. And for us, it's about being in restaurants and being connected to what guests are feeling, what people are saying, how servers and bartenders and runners get excited about the items. You kind of know when stuff works. The guest tells you if it's working or not, and that's the good news. You get a lot of positive feedback, but we don't do a lot of focus groups or anything like that.
No, but you're in your restaurants, so yes. You're interacting with people.
Yeah, I can't, obviously in 110, I'm not in them all the time, but I have partners who are in them, and I'm traveling and visiting them. And I don't know everything from being in a place 2 days a year, but that's why you have a lot of partners and people who are running.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Still staying within these ideas of innovation and creation, I did want to talk a little bit about your organization, and culture, because I think culture can either really uplift innovation and creation and push it forward, or there's a possibility it can stifle innovation and creation, depending on what the culture of an organization is. And so for Let Us Entertain You Enterprises, how did the culture develop? Were there some guiding values or principles that your dad brought to the table when he started the business, or did it more organically develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at what, 50 years later of that version. But at the end of the day, I think what ties us together is human resources, culture, this culture of caring about each other. We have kind of a psychological approach to how we work, but we also consider ourselves a school for entrepreneurs and letting people, especially at the top, the partners who run the restaurants themselves, really make decisions for their business in the best way possible. And having people that we trust, chefs that have great taste, you can't be there to eat every dish, taste everything. You require this tremendous amount of actual trust to allow the innovation to happen. And there are so many creative people in the organization that are literally allowed to be creative. That is, I think, part of what happens. And hey, there are times where I will say, we're not going to do that idea, or we're going to do it. You've got to be the Supreme Court, the veto vote, whatever it is. This is not what we want to do, or I think the idea is off base if it's, a major decision. But on a micro level, there's so much creativity that goes on. And I actually think for when we hire people from the outside that don't come from organizations like that, it actually takes a big adjustment culturally to understand that, a young manager or a young general manager that says, I want to start serving frozen drinks here, at this restaurant. Great, go do it. Like, make some frozen drinks. Let's make sure they're great, and then let's do it. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that. It's like, yeah, I support your idea. Let's give it a shot. Let's do it. Let's get a frozen drink machine. Let's try it out. That's probably the worst example I could ever.
No, but I think it's amazing, because I think when people have autonomy and there's trust within the organization, people want to create. They want to innovate because they feel safe being able to put their ideas out there. And I think that leads to a great deal of innovation and creation within a company, because people feel good about putting their stuff
from a family perspective, we don't always see eye to eye. My dad, my brother, sister, we don't agree. I think generally when we all four of us agree on something, that's usually when we have the best result. But we fight tooth and nail. I mean, we had one the other day where we're doing this tasting for RPM Italian, and we were doing a piece of bronzino, like literally, and there's two different preparations. The one we currently do, and this new one. And my dad, who, I guess this amazing restaurateur, loves this new one. And all other five people are like, absolutely not. The existing one is so much better. And he goes, well, I'm outvoted. It's like, it was said, everyone else wants it here. Wants this version. So.
No, I mean, that makes a huge amount of sense, actually. Yeah, I was going to say there has to be some level of compromise too, whether you're working with employees or your family members. Yeah. So I know I would be remiss if I didn't discuss this with you in terms of discussing COVID and its impact on hospitality. I feel like we need to address that. And I think we all know the significant impact COVID had on hospitality, from shutting restaurants down and only doing takeout to sort of these partial openings. And then now maybe we're moving into a phase where restaurants are fully open and people are starting to come out again. And so I wanted to ask you, at the beginning of COVID, what were some of the issues that your company faced, and how did you deal with these issues? And now, as we sort of limp out of COVID, we're limping into post-COVID or almost there. What are some of the issues that you face now and that you're addressing?
I have PTSD from just talking about the last year and a half. But I have listen, anything I say is probably not new to everyone here, but we find ourselves on March 16th of 2020 being down virtually 100% in the company. The only thing that stays open, we are actually the Krispy Kreme franchisee for the Pacific Northwest and Hawaii. So we have 10 Krispy Kreme, so they don't close. So basically everything else closes for a couple of days. So you find yourself down, I'll just say, like I said, all intents and purposes, 95%. One of our second busiest market is Las Vegas. We have 5 restaurants and casinos. All of them close, boarded up, casinos are done. We can't even do to-go food. So, in Chicago, we figure out we can do to-go and take out and delivery, a couple of days later or a day later, but, do that. On whatever day it was, March 16th, March 17th, we go from 7,000 employees and we furlough basically everyone but the management team for the entire company. So about 6,000 furloughed. And that's the worst day of my life. I mean, the worst day of my working career for sure. I did an all company phone call. It was tearful, horrible. You're not just like, for us, these are people I've worked with for 30, 25 years. I've known everyone. And the weird part is you're getting these thank yous that say, thank you for being kind. And we created furlough benefits the best that we could, but we have no idea what's going to happen, right? We don't know if this is lasting 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Sometime into April, you realize this is going on a lot longer than you thought it was. We're in basically a to-go only mode in the cities that we can operate in. We're running it with only chefs and management teams, almost no hourly employees. Like I said, they're still on furlough. We're covering everyone's health insurance, I think, up until August. We're trying to really be as kind as we could and generous. We created an emergency relief fund ended up having a couple $1 million in it that we gave out to staff. We put our own money in to just to give out to people, so they had some emergency relief, and my sister and my brother managed every check that went out to people and got money to people quickly, because this is before unemployment system's a nightmare. All this stuff is kind of rough. And you're still you still feel like the bad guy even when you're trying to do good stuff. It's so weird. It's doesn't feel right. But so you kind of, at that point, we just realized that this to-go world is our business, right? And I think this is where the entrepreneurial side of the company is proud. And I want to say something it's horrible, but at the same time, and this is going to sound so weird, but it was also exhilarating because every day was different. And so there was a part of it that there's a little bit of adrenaline that you're like, this is kind of, fun's not the right word, but there's an excitement of trying to decide what to do every day. You literally don't know, should we have, you don't even know what the next day, what the rules are going to be. There's no government help at this time. You're just trying to figure it out. We create a delivery committee that is making sure that we're making our delivery systems as profitable as possible. They're helping convert people off of DoorDash and Grubhub into something called, at the time, Chow Now, because it's less expensive, and pushing our guests towards that. Over the course of 6 months, we create 9 virtual restaurants that we run with new concepts. We create something called Let Us Take Care of You. We realize there's no traffic in Chicago and some of the other markets, even in DC. So we do these packages where we'll drive food delivered to your house in the suburbs. There's driving cars, because we're just going to, if they can't come to us and they're not coming downtown, we're going to go to them, right? There's 8-9 million people in Chicago, but 3 million downtown. So we pick up another 5 million if we're willing to go out, and something that would take an hour and a half to get to takes 15 minutes right now. So at that time, then the end of the summer last year, you get to open again. People are nervous about coming back, hard to convince everyone to come back. You kind of got to make some crappy decisions on callbacks. If you get called back and you don't want to come back, you're going to get terminated. It's it's none of it's easy. And then we get a second wave of shutdowns in the end of last year, at least in Chicago, and I think in California as well.
Yes, we did too.
And DC, our DC stuff closed. We only have one little restaurant in Santa Monica, so we don't have a lot in Los Angeles. And so you kind of go through this whole process again. Although we didn't furlough people that time, we just let people stay active because we didn't think it was going to last as long. It lasted 3 months, but we let people stay active so they didn't have to have disruption. And if you would have asked me in April or May of 20, what would it be like? And this is, like I said, none of this is new news, but I would have said demand wouldn't come back quickly, but it would be plentiful hiring. It would be so easy to hire people because all these restaurants would be closed and all these people in the industry would be around. And it turns out to be the exact opposite. We're in the summer, beginning of summer 21, the demand is off the charts, and we don't have nearly enough people to open all of our dining rooms, our services, hours, whatever. So, and that's kind of where we find ourselves today, where it's been, so you have this second wave that just is like another challenge in the industry. And then now you're starting to deal with supply chain issues. So that's like the third hit. And I actually skipped the middle part, which was, for most of our city stores, you end up with the Floyd protests around the beginning of the protests, and that was highly disruptive in Chicago. We had major looting. All 25 of our restaurants downtown are broken into and looted in the same night.
Wow.
And then DC is politically a mess. So we have one restaurant in very close proximity to the White House. When and this is not a political statement, like, there's protests almost every day. We get shut down 30 or 40 days over the course of 20 because of various protests of all kinds going on near the White House. So, sort of DC and Chicago had that same sort of violence that happened and looting that happened. So that's like another kick in the pants during this time. But so that sort of summarizes the year. And now we find ourselves here, and we're cautiously optimistic. We're excited. We opened 4 new restaurants during COVID, or during this time. So we didn't stop, but it's not easy. And I'd say 50% of my problems today are literally, there's just complete mental fatigue going on for people, and I'm sure it's for everyone here. It's not, everyone's got their breaking points. I had my own moments. I took a week away. I said, I got to get out of here. I mean, I just took a week to myself because I wasn't thinking straight. It happens to everyone. And there becomes a point where you're making everything, you're making decisions on. So it's there's this decision fatigue every time. Should we mandate vaccine? Should we not mandate vaccine? Should we, there's no right answer, and there's no winning answer for these things. So, every time along the way, you're trying to make what you think is the best decision possible, knowing that you're probably going to alienate someone or make someone feel bad,
Yeah, no winning. And I feel like
to give you
I feel like perpetually you're having to make decisions continually. Something new is coming at you on the daily.
Yeah, look, truly. Yeah. So, and we're a private company, so there are finite resources here. We're a conservative group. We have a lot of resources for ourselves, but there's no public market to fall back on. There's no, there's not. So you say you're looking at your balance sheets and say, do we have enough cash to get to a blank date or whatever? And those were real. How do we extend our money that we have? Because we could run out real quick if we didn't make big decisions. So luckily we've survived. We're doing great. It was a busy summer, so there's a lot of positivity on the other side of it, but it's tough.
It's tough, but at least it's wonderful to hear that people are coming back again, and summer was good for your restaurants. That's really amazing to hear. And so, I mean, obviously, I think this is actually a good lead into my next question. You had so many decisions to make over this past year, and you had to lead your company during this crazy time. And so I wanted to talk to you about, what do you feel are the values or core values that inform your leadership of LEYE? Anytime you have to make a decision, what do you come back to?
I mean, at the end of the day, our reputation is really important to us, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's just I hope we're known for doing the right thing. And I think there's people that definitely felt that they were probably wronged along the way. I don't think it's possible to make everyone happy. Why don't I have insurance and I do? Why did you cover this? Why did you, and you're putting people in arbitrary buckets. You're trying to, in a group with finite resources. But I think, I would just hope that the guiding principle is do I feel like we would be proud of that decision if we look back on it in 6 months or 4 months? And that's, I guess that's probably how we run the company in general, but honesty and integrity. And not everything's perfect. There's 7,000 people here, and people have weird interactions, and people are humans, and they do stupid stuff or say stupid things. But including myself sometimes, probably, and that was truly the principle of what we did. It's like, are we caring enough about what we can do with the limited options that we have?
Yeah, there's clearly a sense of empathy in your decision making, trying to take care of the people that you could take care of. So I want to talk a little bit about, and you mentioned RP Battalion that you're opening up, or that was opening up in Vegas, but in hospitality, there's always opportunities and trends that you could take advantage of. And so I just wanted to hear from you, what are some opportunities and trends that the company wants to dive into? And do you have any interesting additional projects up your sleeve that you could talk about with us? Fun stuff.
We're, it's been fortunate to being around for 50 years. You get a lot of us spectacular developers that now say, well, I'm at least going to work with the guys who are still around and still standing after this, right? So that part's nice. The opportunities have truly been more than we can handle. The intake has been almost overwhelming of new options. Before we had done this, we had made a conscious decision, this is in 18 and 19, that we wanted to do more work in Texas and Florida. We were going to do some restaurants there, and probably continue to expand in markets that we already were, including looking at California, Chicago, Las Vegas, DC, Minnesota. But we found that there's just sort of a beauty of having, not only there's probably some political diversity of those two states, but for us, there's actually weather diversity, which is a nice thing. For us, Las Vegas is busiest in January and February. Chicago is not the busiest then. So there's some real balance that happens for us company-wide. And even though we have these individual restaurants that don't necessarily aren't affecting each other, it still is nice to have that. And frankly, just places to go when you want to get out of Chicago in January. So we had already started thinking about that, and this has sort of accelerated that we're going to be doing some restaurants in Palm Beach. We have a restaurant called Abba. We opened one in Austin, Texas in October of last year. And that was our first Texas restaurant. We're going to try to do more in Austin. We're going to be building a restaurant at Disney World in Florida, which is pretty exciting for us. I have a lot of respect for that organization, and not like they're just, to do what they do on the scale that they do. Disney World, I think, is the largest single site employer in the world. 25 square miles, there's, 50, 60, 80,000 people working there that work for Disney, and to do what they can do at such a, like, place is clean and organized, and by and large people are friendly, like that ability to do that is pretty amazing, even though some food might not be great, and you're gonna have a giant turkey leg or something like that. That's not spectacular, but
sure.
We're excited to do work there, to do a restaurant on our own.
That sounds awesome. Here's the thing. I feel like you have created and successfully run so many different brands in the restaurant industry for a long time. And so I really wanted to ask you, because I think secretly so many of us think about running restaurants, it's a real sexy business, or we think it is. I think the world thinks it is. What do you think makes a restaurant successful? Like, what do you think is the secret sauce at the end of the day?
I don't know if there's one real, one thing. I think you have to like the food. I think the business is really simple when you get down. You make good food and get in people's mouths. There's nothing actually more complicated than that. It doesn't take a genius to run a restaurant. It doesn't take genius to run a restaurant company. People on this call are probably much brighter than myself and a lot of people in our organization. We have a lot of people who didn't graduate college in our group. But I think I think you have to care about serving people. I mean, at the end of the day, that is the job, and not everyone wants to do that. some people are born salespeople, some people want to be served, some people want to work in finance. I think you've got to be connected to what people want, because at the end of the day, this is entirely a people-focused business, from people who work for you and people who dine there, right? And so that ability to interact is the key. But I think people go back to restaurants that they feel good in. I think that the lighting has to be right, the music has to be right. And, you probably go to a place because you love the food or the convenience, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. I don't know if there's one answer, but you go with what you like and what you're comfortable in. I think you have cravings for things, and those cravings are what make your decision a lot. I
agree with you. I agree with you. I think, and if you feel cared for in whatever restaurant you're going into, the likelihood is you're probably going to come back because you had a good experience. So, I want to do just a couple more questions and then I'll open it up. I know there's some questions from our audience. Since you are second generation running this family business, I did want to ask you, by the time you came into the business, LEYE was established, even a legacy brand, I would argue. And so did you feel the pressure of maintaining and improving the brand? How did you handle that pressure?
No, I had to come to the realization, this is probably years of therapy, that got me here, that I am not my dad. I don't need to be him, and in fact, trying to be a facsimile of him is not healthy. I'm not living here. What would Rich do? I mean, he is a voice in my head. He gives advice, but at the end of the day, I have opinions and perspectives that aren't the same as him. And my brother and sister are the same. And when we did our first restaurant, which was about 13 years ago, all of us had been working in the industry in some respect, but it was a culmination of our ideas, and it worked, and just like in 1971, RJ Gruntz was a culmination of his ideas. And I know I said that it's best when we all agree, but he's got the perspective of a 70-something-year-old, and I have the perspective of a 40-something-year-old, and my sister and brother in the 30s. So it's like you got to kind of be true to your own voice and have the confidence to do what you feel is right. And then, there's no, and then when it doesn't work, the confidence to change it too, realize you made a mistake.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have, I'm sure on this call, we have a number of second and third family, people with second and third generation families working in their family businesses or running their family businesses. And so I really wanted to talk to you about what advice you have for second and third generation family members coming into their family businesses, running their family businesses, in terms of successfully running the company, but being able to maintain good family relationships, because you work with your dad, your brother, your sister.
And I would be lying if I said that they were always good. I mean, there are times where we might be working together, but he doesn't talk to me for 2 weeks. So or is upset and I don't know why. I think we do, my brother or sister and I especially, I think try to do or spend a lot of time not doing work stuff. Like we socialize together, they come, I have a young son, and they come and play with him, and we're friends too. So I think that part stays separate, and not every day is a great work day, but we can still be family together and go on family trips, and those are actually fun for us. My dad has a hard time switching off between work and family sometimes, so I think that that is challenging. And everyone's family dynamics are different, but we have fairly clear roles, responsibilities, and I think all of us have gone to see a therapist a lot. Not necessarily the same person. I'm saying we've all of us have had therapy, and I think that makes it a lot easier. And having someone to talk to that isn't a family member to get advice and perspective, because you kind of have to have that.
Yeah, well, I think actually, interestingly enough, this is actually a good lead into some of the questions that the audience would like to ask you. So if we could just spend a few minutes talking about that. So Gigi has asked us, do you, your brother and sister as siblings make decisions for the company as a team?
Often, yeah. I'm sort of the final vote, I guess, with my role, but or a deciding vote. But I think generally, yes, we do. We have an executive committee as well with other senior partners that we do things together, and we get together once every 2 weeks for like now it's a Google Meet as opposed to in person, but decide vacation policies and mundane stuff and vaccine policies and other things that we get together, and I ultimately can make the final decisions on a lot of these things. But
so I think this is actually a really interesting one. How did the transition between your father's generation and your generation work out? I mean, did it go smoothly? I mean, I know your father is still pretty active in the business.
Yeah, it's still here. We're in the middle of it, right? Yeah, I was promoted to president of the company. I was already an executive partner with project president in 2017. I immediately jumped into doing jobs related to that, running the business level of the company, I suppose. We actually have a CEO as well. He's been with my dad for 42 years, a guy named Kevin Brown. But he slowly sort of, Kevin's amazing, but has let me do a lot of the leading during this time. So, and really said my role is to transition this, to you guys too. And he's not anywhere close to retiring, but has been an immense leader. And I think, and maybe it's part of it is the culture of the company. And one thing we say is to grow, you have to be able to replace yourself. Having someone who can do the job and be the best at it, but never train anyone else to do it is not the most valuable person on our team. And so, especially at the senior partner level, I'd say most of the senior partners really get that idea of growing by replacing yourself. And that's how you grow, by having really strong people below you. And I think that made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that actually makes a whole lot of sense. And I have, like maybe one additional question.
Yeah.
Someone asked, in what forms do your restaurants gather data, acknowledge it, and react to it when you initially start to expand a concept? Like, are you collecting data? Are you analyzing it? How do you do that?
We're really systematizing everything. So the thing about Lettuce, that it looks like we have 60 different concepts and 110 restaurants. But the reality is that all the restaurants kind of do the same thing every day. We have a system for how we take inventory in the morning and do ordering for food and analyzing what sells and doesn't sell, how we handle, we have marketing is sort of universalized. There's just a culture of how we respond to customer service complaints. It's actually one of the questions there. Employee training, we have a management training program that's 3 months long, but every manager in the company who joins us goes through the same management training, regardless of what restaurant they are, even though they'll have specific restaurant training as well. So pretty universalized in the generic stuff that's on the back end. What was the rest of the question? Sorry.
I think it was, hold on, let me pull it up again. I think we talked a little about how you gather data, acknowledge it, and then how do you react to it when you're thinking about expanding?
Yeah, so I think there's really a methodology of how we collect information and then make decisions. I talked about stars and dogs and looking at menus, what's selling and not selling, what are the costs of those items, and it's too generic to talk about it as a group, but we really do look at those things, and I'm not looking at all of them every day. I'm looking at it when I'm focusing on a problem or a restaurant. We also do complete financial statements for the restaurants every 2 weeks. We have we call it a call-in, where all the general managers report their numbers to a group of people, including myself and the CFO, every 2 weeks. So we kind of are looking at it on a financial basis the same, and everyone's call-in sheets look the same, so we can compare them to each other, even though there could be a restaurant that does 25 million in sales and one that does 2 million, and they're completely different, but we're still looking at the same information. So
Yeah, that makes sense actually. And I think I want to close out with a fun question. That's okay with you. And someone asked, how often do you travel to the country of the cuisine for your research to find out what's new? I know you mentioned you went to Japan. And so how often do you think you're doing that to really go to some of the, because you have so many different brands and types of
Working on
food.
something new, I think we would probably take a trip there. If we're doing a French restaurant, I don't know if I wouldn't go 4 or 5 times. And I've been to France now several times in my life. So I might not even go again, although I might go to get re-inspired. Part of it's just selfish, like, or personal, where I might want to just go. I'd like to go to, Paris because I want to go to Paris, not because we're necessarily working on French, but we're always looking at new food. So, if there's Italians on here, I'm sorry, but like sometimes I think the Italian food in America is better than the Italian food in Italy. So if we're working in an Italian restaurant, I might go get inspired by what's going on, in other cities. Evan Funky is a really good friend of mine, the guy from Felix up the street from me, from LMU, I think it's right, is in Venice. And
Yes.
He comes to Chicago and cooks with us once a year or something like that, just for fun. And I get just as inspired by hanging out with him as I probably would if I went to Italy and don't speak any Italian and wouldn't meet, although a trip to Italy doesn't sound so bad either.
No, but I think you're right. Inspiration can come from many different places. It doesn't just have to be from visiting a particular country.
And I might go to New York, right? I might go to LA. If I'm, you're going to see what's new and hot. And there's just so many ideas brewing in Chicago. In America.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with you. I wanted to say a huge thank you to you for taking the time this morning to talk to us about innovation, creation in the hospitality industry, and what your company's gone through this past year and a half, and where you're headed. We really appreciate the time, and please, you are welcome anytime to come back and chat with us. I really enjoyed this, RJ. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you to all the students who were listening as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Take care.